It's time. Preseason game one. I don't care if it's preseason. Football is officially back right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on three. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm with my co-host Rohan. Rohan, how are you doing, my man?
Hey man, been a crazy week with some personal stuff. Took some time off of the streaming, but we're back because it's a Sunday, and it's our first Sunday where we have real football to look ahead. And 49ers, they're playing the Raiders here later today, and it's going to be a fun day, man. Looking at some real football.
Hey man, football's officially back. Like it's cool when it's training camp and everything like that. But once you get to strap them up and you get to see your team hit other players from opposing teams, you get to trash talk. Even though it's preseason, right? Like there's still a little trash talk. Or you don't want to lose to the Raiders. Like you never do, especially in the preseason. Their fan base is a little wild. They'll treat the preseason game like it's a regular season Super Bowl, or more like a Super Bowl than a regular season game. But so never want to lose to the Raiders. Their fans are just obnoxious at times. But the biggest thing I'm most excited about is we finally get to see the 49ers in live action. No one else to report things. We get to see it with our own eyes. We don't have to hear from other people who are on the ground. So that is a much needed excitement. What are you looking for going into this preseason game, Rohan? I know it's a quick one that 49ers just got done playing them with the joint practices for the last few days, a day off. So what are you expecting?
Well, first of all, I got to take what Kyle Shanahan says at face value here and put stock into the joint practices, which we'll get to in a bit. I think that those were the two more valuable parts, and I'll explain why in a little later on as to why I think you should value what was in those joint practices. But in the preseason, I don't care about the top level players. I don't. Instead, I'm looking at those position battles. I'm really looking at those guys who are on the edge to make the roster, or guys who are fighting for a certain spot on the depth chart. You can point to running back. You can point to receiver. You can point to linebacker. You can point to, hell, even tight end if the 49ers, have a discrepancy whether they're carrying 3 or 4. There are a lot of different things that you can point to, and you could say, guess what? That's a position group where the 49ers might, go one way or another. And what might be the biggest indicator of how they end up going would be preseason performance. And so, that's where I'm starting to see who are we really looking to see stand out in this game, and who is there to keep an eye on going forward. Because it's not only the 49ers keeping an eye out on their own roster, it's the entire NFL keeping an eye out on the other teams' rosters, because come cutdown day, when the 49ers cut down some players, there are going to be other teams that look to try and take some players away.
And I think that's the biggest thing. I think for me, that's what's most exciting about the preseason is you have those back end of the roster battles, like Deshaun Jameson, right? For example, we'll get straight into it. Could make the team. He has a talent at corner. He's capable of being a guy that can make it because of special teams ability as well. So that's the fine back end of roster when you have the talent. But what else do you provide? Like if you're not going to be playing for my team, what else can you provide for the roster? And I think that's the biggest thing. I see everyone in the chat. So this is a good question. I believe the game is on NFL Network, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but I thought it was on NFL Network. If you do not have NFL Network, there are streaming apps that you could watch the game on. If you do not have NFL Network, yes, it is on NFL Network.
Yeah, NFL Network is what it's on. Yeah.
So make sure you guys plan accordingly. So for some reason, I think they did do all preseason games on NFL Network for some reason, which is very odd. Um, so great point, Harold. Excited about the QB plays. To see the QBs play, Trey Lance gets to start. So QB2, QB3, there was a battle there for a little bit. Everyone thought it was going to be Sam Darnold. Looks like Trey Lance is the leader in that category for quarterback 2. Now, Kyle Shanahan gives Lance a start. Do you think this is a showcase for Trey Lance? Do you think this is Trey Lance has won this battle? He's deserved the start. What are your thoughts on Trey Lance getting the start?
Personally, I don't understand the trade aspect at this portion of the offseason. I just think it's honestly too late. One, we've already seen the value of Trey Lance at the draft. He had none. He had zero trade value. There was no team that wanted to trade Trey Lance when the 49ers were at least trade for him when the 49ers were at least listening to offers. Now, at this stage in the offseason, Trey Lance isn't going anywhere else to start. He's going to be a backup somewhere else. There's no way that a team integrates him 3 weeks before the season and implements them as their starter when rolling with another guy for the entirety of the offseason. If somebody trades for Trey Lance, it's a bet on his potential. And I truly don't think that one preseason game will change the fact of other teams' minds, So to me, here's how I look at the situation. If Trey Lance continues to play well and outplay Sam Darnold, the 49ers don't move him. Instead, they're happy with what they have and understand that with their quarterback luck, you likely rely on your QB2 at some point, and they prefer Trey Lance to Sam Darnold, and they're going to keep him. However, if Trey Lance, if he stinks, and he's not that good, and Sam Darnold wins the QB2 job, there's not going to be a team that wants to trade for him because he's not good. So, I think those are the true outcomes. It's either the 49ers keep him because he is good or the 49ers keep him because he's not good. And so, to me, that's the way that I look at it. I don't think that the trade aspect is necessarily a factor. I know that might disagree with some other people, but I don't see the trade aspect as heavily right now. Although it is important to note that this is the first public showcase that Lance will have of this entire year. This is the first showcase where other teams will look at Lance, apart from the joint practices, will look at Lance and see, this is how he's improved. And so he's got a chance to prove himself, not only for his own organization, but for other organizations as well. I still personally believe he remains a Niner with the two different scenarios I laid out.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's a showcase at all. We would have to be lying to ourselves, right? If we all thought Kyle Shanahan didn't see the improvement of Trey Lance during the offseason, right? Because if you, myself, and other people could go and we're able to see the improvement from Trey Lance, all the reporters that are credentialed are seeing the improvement and they're talking about it, we're talking about it. Kyle Shanahan sees it. There's no question about that. So for me, I don't think it's a showcase. I think Kyle Shanahan has been impressed. He's been saying it as it is, right? He said it last year too when the 49ers kept Jimmy Garoppolo. He kept saying, I don't plan on trade. Unless we get a good enough offer, we're not trading Jimmy Garoppolo. We feel comfortable keeping him on our roster the entire time. And he's been similar saying that about Trey Lance. We're not really looking to trade him. So I don't think it's a trade bait. But the thing is what I have noticed is Trey Lance has outsnapped Sam Darnold in training camp. So for me, I feel like it was a start that was earned by Trey Lance rather than anything else. So I'm very excited to see how Trey Lance reacts to being the starter today. We've seen him come in during training camp when he's with the ones, and we see a much more confident Trey Lance. We see a Trey Lance that pushes the ball downfield with confidence. When we see him with the twos and threes, we don't see him. We see him as a confident quarterback, but he kind of shies away. This isn't my offense right now. This is Brock's, right? So I want to see the confident Trey. Shout out to Edgar. or Edgar, 49ers Bro and Bang channel. I believe that's where you guys can watch the game if you do not have NFL Network. Appreciate everyone in the chat. I see you guys' questions. We will start getting to those questions. But I want to talk about expectations, Rohan. Trey Lance is about to start for the first half. What are you expecting from Trey Lance? Are you expecting 2 touchdowns, 0 interception performance? What are you expecting from Trey?
To be honest, I have 0 statistical expectations. I don't really care whether he throws 3 for 5 for 40 yards or 6 for 10 for 500 yards. I don't really care what he throws for. To me, this is Trey Lance's first true opportunity where he'll have the chance to develop consistency in a longer period of time. The 49ers, I've liked and not liked what they've done at the quarterback position, but I've understood at times what they've tried to do. So the reason that you see some quarterbacks get layoffs is because they have 4 quarterbacks and they're trying to rotate them overall. But the other part is they want to try and stack multiple reps for quarterbacks back to back to get them some form of consistency, at least with the backups. Now Trey Lance doesn't have to worry about that. You're going for a full half. You've got a full half to see what you see, learn from it, and continue to grow with the next set of reps. And so I think that that'll be cool. It's not probably going to be a super pass heavy day. The 49ers want to utilize their running backs a good amount, and they want to test their offensive line on the ground.
Throw the ball a lot.
I mean, that's the hope. But if we're being honest, if you look at the backups, the running backs are the strong suit of the team, and you probably do want to see, some of those guys who will separate themselves. If Mitchell is back, him, Jordan Mason, Tyrion Davis-Price, you probably want to put Elijah Mitchell on display to try and get some trade offers, And so that's something that I think we'll see what the 49ers do. But overall, for Trey Lance specifically, I want consistency. I want him to learn from the mistakes. I want an array of throws, push the ball downfield, but more importantly, this is now the preseason. This isn't practice. You don't really have the luxury of the interceptions that you could have or the poor throws that you could have. Make your reads, make your high-low reads, but don't stick too far. Don't wait too long. Don't process as you normally process. Be decisive with the football. Don't wait too long to try and see a play develop down the field. And also, don't be afraid to run. Don't be afraid to use your legs now. This is not, it's not a time where you are forced to be a pocket passer. This is real football. Go ahead, use your legs. That's kind of what I want to see, because that is personally what I think. If you put it all together, that's when Lance will have a solid outing with the offense today.
And I'm in comparison with you because yesterday I was talking to Josh Harper, had him on the podcast. Shout out to Josh Harper. Make sure you guys go subscribe to him. Great dude, knows ball. We're both in agreement with you in the sense of we don't care about the stat line. Like Trey could go 6 for 12 with 6 drops. But were the drops on him? No. If it hits people in the hands, that's not on him. So I'm not worried about stats. I'm not worried about whatever the case may be. People, he only had 100. I don't care about that. I really don't. The reason is because if you pay attention to what the Niners did last year with Brock Purdy and how they were very successful with Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo, they threw the ball for I want to say Brock Purdy averaged 220 yards passing in his starts, which isn't crazy. It's not crazy to throw 220 in this offense. Jimmy Garoppolo, I believe, was at 240. That's not crazy to do in this offense. I'm just looking for him to be able to command the offense, look comfortable. Now, like you said, he's going to get a full string of reps, unlike training camp. So, for example, he's going to get potentially a 10-play drive if he is able to move the ball and get the offense clicking, right? So, for me, I'm more excited about that than anything because in training camp, when you have one series and then you're off for 35 or 40 minutes and then you come back, your body gets cold. Whether you keep it stretching and everything, you do get cold and you kind of have to re-stretch. I mean, that's why he stays loose on the sideline. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see how does he command the offense. Are we moving the ball in from the 20 to the 20? Are we getting points? Like, to me, that's the biggest thing. Are we capitalizing on offense? Pushing the ball downfield. I want to see the ball be pushed downfield. You were drafted 3rd overall to push the ball down the field, not to check the ball down and consistently check it down. I don't want to see check downs. I want to see you push the ball to the intermediate level, deep, make the correct reads, go from read to read, take off when you have to. Like, I'm just looking to see if the Trey Lance we saw in training camp is the Trey Lance we see today. Like, does it carry over? Because we've seen in training camp a quarterback who was going from read to read, pushing the ball downfield. Does he do that in today's game? And for me, I'm very excited to see what goes on because the 49ers have an opportunity to take a look at these 2 quarterbacks that are going today and dictate who their quarterback 2 is in a way. And the reason why I say this is because both the O-line with the second unit is bad, like very bad. So if you don't have any starters out there on the O-line, you're going to see a lot of pressure. How do they react when pressure is there? Do they stay poised? Do they stay calm? Or do they fold? And to me, that's the biggest question mark for both of these quarterbacks at the moment.
I think that's fair. And do I care that much that, Lance is the guy who gets the first start? Darnold is the guy running with the 2s? Not necessarily. I mean, regardless of in my personal opinion, I think the 49ers have their mindset on QB2 and QB3. I don't think that much. I don't think an extra quarter in the preseason is going to change their minds. I honestly don't, especially when you're running with the units that they're going to run with. And so I don't think it's going to be that different. I think the 49ers have a preset standing of what the quarterback situation for them is. I'll probably keep it under wraps until the depth chart comes out at the beginning of the season. But you're right. You're hoping for a command of the offense. For me, Trey Lance, that's what we point out. And now if we move on to Sam Darnold, the number one thing I'm looking for is decisiveness. My biggest gripe with Sam Darnold this offseason was his indecision. He held onto the ball too long, looking to either push the ball downfield or being slow with his processing that caused him to go to his last read, hit the check down late. And as a result, you'll see different plays where Darnold immediately goes to the check down instead of going through the duration of the play. And that's why, you might see his completion percentage be higher than normal because he goes for the check down a good amount compared to the other quarterbacks. And it's quick. That's something I want to see. I want to see Darnold go through the process, try and process, a little quicker and try and get to that check down on different throws when needed sooner, but also, go through the duration of the play. That's what I'm looking for from Sam Darnold.
Absolutely. I think Sam Darnold, so I noticed it when I was there at training camp. And it's funny because yesterday having Josh Harper on the podcast and we're talking, I asked him about Sam Darnold. He had a comment about Sam Darnold being indecisive and looked uncomfortable in the offense. I was like, he used the word uncomfortable. Didn't look as comfortable as Brock and Trey. And to me, I think that stands out right away with Sam Darnold. So I'm very curious to see if we see that today on national television. Because if we see that with Sam Darnold, that's dangerous because he's not going to get much more comfortable in this offense this season, at least this season. Whether people say it takes a long time to learn Kyle's offense or not, you probably won't see him be decisive, ready to command this offense.
And real quick, that's why I pointed out 2 weeks ago, when I was really getting this thing in my mind about Sam Darnold. Pointed out, that's kind of what Kyle wants him. Kyle can dictate where to throw the football, regardless of whether Darnold believes it's a good throw or not. He can say, you throw there because this is what I want in my offense, and Darnold will give him that.
But even when you do that, I feel like there's
it's not a good way to run your offense. You have to obviously maneuver. You can't just preset reads every time. That's what Garoppolo did at times, and you saw the turnover-worthy play rate when that happened.
But even then, I felt like Jimmy was much better getting from first read to second read if it wasn't there, or finding his check down, third read. Instead, I feel like Sam goes right away to his check down. I feel like it's so quick to go to the check down. He stares the number one receiver down the entire time out of his break. Oh, snap. I got to get to read two, and he's way too late. So for me, I don't think that's your quarterback too. If you want to win games, I don't think you're gonna be winning much with Sam Darnold. And just like young DeKong, Dick Dong, I don't know how to say that name, but Brock doesn't need. Actually, pause. By the way, Brock doesn't need to put up Rodgers or Brady's numbers. Brock operates this offense to its fullest potential. I don't think any of the quarterbacks need to put up Rodgers or Brady's numbers. I don't. The reason I say this is the defense, the run game, and the weapons around them. I think it's easy to put up 220 to 240 passing yards in this offense with these weapons. So for me, I don't think the numbers will tell the full story. I think the numbers will be a little skewed for any of the quarterbacks starting, in my opinion. So, Rohan, it's not just a quarterback battle. If you're in the chat, please ask your questions. I appreciate all the questions. We'll get to those towards the end. Make sure you go like and subscribe to both channels, the Clutch Gene Sports channel, Rohan's channel, which is in the description. So is the Clutch Gene Sports if you're on Rohan's channel. Go subscribe to both. You don't want to miss out. I'm going to be doing a lot more. Rohan's going to be doing a lot more. I know that for sure. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Hit the notification bell so you guys know every time we go live, and drop your questions in the chat. Rohan, running backs. Any of the running backs you're excited to see? There's no really running back 2 at the moment. It's kind of a toss up for running back 2. Anyone you're looking to see take over running back 2?
I personally want to see JP Mason a little more now. Why? Because Jordan Mason, that is, looked good in the preseason. In training camp. He looked good. His lone gripe was the fumble. He had 3 fumbles, 2 on the same day, and they happened early in camp. Held onto the football for the remainder of camp. But this is where fumbles truly happen, when it's live tackling. That wasn't an issue for Mason in his rookie season. I want to see, is this an issue that carries on to the preseason, especially as you get a little more continued reps in your first action of physicality? That's something I want to see. I also want to see him as a pass catcher. That is something I definitely want to see, because he shined to me in his rookie season as a pass catcher. In limited reps, he shined as a pass catcher. I thought there was some potential there, and they've started to implement that potential this past training camp. Want to see that continue here during Want to see that continue here during the preseason and start off with today. But in this group, there's a lot of players I want to see. I want to see TDP. How does TDP look, in this portion of the preseason? Because overall, when you talk about training camp, running back is one of the hardest groups to evaluate. There's no tackling. There's no contact, right? It's tough to evaluate until you truly get live action, which is the preseason. TDP, that's going to be his first shot. But I also want to see, can Elijah Mitchell hold it up? And does he continue to look good? Because he could be on the trade block. And then the last name, Kellen Laborn. I mean, he's a guy who's stood out. And if he looks good enough that you can't let him go, that could mean Mitchell's expendable and you carry 4 on the 53-man roster, as I predicted on my 53-man projection.
And you mentioned Laborn at the end, which I firmly believe he is going to look good in the preseason. Like, the way he runs stands out. And what I mean by that, he runs hard, he's elusive, he's not afraid of contact. He's going to lower his shoulders and give you the boom. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. Actually, that's a running back I'm excited to see, because he's the back end of the roster guy who could potentially make an NFL roster based off of the preseason games. The one I'm most excited about outside of Laborn is definitely TDP. What I saw from TDP was a running back that changed his body, is more decisive, and understanding the offense, and he needs to get north and south rather than try to stretch everything outside. I'm very excited to see that. Now, I don't know how much we see of Mitchell. because of the injury that he recently just had. I feel like he could be a guy who doesn't suit up. Feel like he might be a guy that he already has enough film out there that if you're going to trade him, teams know who he is, right? Like you don't have to showcase him. Like, people know who he is already. I'm excited about TDP. Now Mason, the fumble issue doesn't worry me. I don't feel like that's a worry, son. My guess is um, either Deshaun Jameson you're talking about or Jameson from the Saints. Please elaborate in the comments. I know the Saints and Chiefs are playing right now, so I don't know what's going on.
I would assume Deshaun Jameson.
I hope so. I mean,
what are you thinking about him and what you want to see from him in the preseason?
Well, for the running, I'll continue on the running backs real quick, but I don't think Mason's gonna have fumble issues. I think he's gonna shine in the preseason. He's the kind of running back that he understands what he needs to do, and I think he's gonna take care of the ball. I'm not worried about that. Running back issues, the fumble issues that we've had in the past, not an issue for me. I'm really not. For Deshaun Jameson, I'm excited to see him because he's very sticky in coverage. But not only that, I want to see him return a couple of punts and a kick. He's electric in the punt return game. I think he's more dynamic as a punt returner than Ronnie Bell. He has more explosiveness. I think he has better long speed. So I'm very excited to see Deshaun Jameson. He's a guy I think that is most likely going to make the roster. If not, he's definitely going to make the roster somewhere else. Like when you have a young, let me put it in this perspective. When you have a young, undrafted free agent come into training camp, walk over to Chakravarthi, who is a seasoned veteran, he's been in the league for a while, and tell him, this is how you backpedal. Be patient. What rookie has the cojones, has the balls to go up to a veteran and say, hey, this is how you do it? That means he is confident, he has the ability, and he most likely is making a roster. One thing you need from a corner is confidence. I'm very excited to see Deshaun Jameson.
That's a guy who I definitely think, you talk about Deshaun Jameson. He's a guy who I want to see in both facets of the game. You talk about the return game. That's the game where right now is totally up for grabs. Ronnie Bell is a guy who you've seen thrown in there. I think Willie Snead was a name thrown in there. I would like to see Danny Gray get some reps both in punt and kick. And then Deshaun Jameson, he might be the most electric returner on the team after what he produced in Texas. So you've got a lot of names there. Deshaun Jameson, I definitely want to see. I honestly, at this point, I think he's a roster lock. I said it at the end of training camp, thought he was a lock to make the roster. And that's pretty significant, understanding he's a sixth cornerback, and they don't always carry six. They sometimes carry five. So to me, Deshaun Jameson, that's a name you got to continue to watch, and that's a name I'm very excited about this preseason.
Now, a couple other guys I'm excited to see. I'm really excited to see Danny Gray. I really hope he gets a lot of run with Trey because this dude's speed. So, like, there's different kinds of speeds, right? Like you have Brandon Ayuk, he's fast. Like he's really fast. You have guys like Debo, fast. But when I say Danny Gray speed, think of Deshaun Jackson. That's the kind of speed he has. Like if you enjoyed watching Deshaun Jackson play when he was with the Eagles, I believe he was with the Commanders for a little bit. If you enjoyed watching Deshaun Jackson highlights at Cal Berkeley in the Bay Area, this is what Danny Gray could become. Like, I'm not saying that's who he is, but with the speed he has, that's who he can become. Imagine Kyle scheming up a deep shot for Danny Gray because everyone is eyes on Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and you have Danny Gray running one-on-one with a corner. It's not going to happen. The corner isn't gonna cover Danny Gray one-on-one with that kind of speed. It's not gonna happen. So quit asking. It's literally asking a corner to cover him one-on-one is not gonna happen. Now, I'm excited to see Gray. I think he might have a big play or two. I want to see him in the return game as well. I don't think Kyle will let him return a kick or two, but I think he should be a candidate for a kick returner. I really believe Danny Gray's emergence. So we talk about Danny Gray in the sense of last year he didn't play much. The offense was really, really good. Danny Gray could take this offense from being really, really good to being really, really great. And what I mean by that is if you have the ability to take it over the top, you can't run coverages that are stacking the box, coming downhill. You have to protect the deep shot. And I think that's what Danny Gray provides. And I'm very excited to see it today.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a little less bullish on Danny Gray this season for his outlook this season, but I can't deny what I saw in camp. Danny Gray was much improved in camp, and he, in my opinion, locked himself with a roster spot with the way that he's improved. He's got good hands. He's got, like, his hands are pretty sticky. Not many drop issues, and that was the thing where he tried to catch with his chest. Solid hands when he uses them this year. Other things, his route running is better, and that's improved because and made him look faster on the field because when he's able to be a better route runner and able to win at the line of scrimmage, he's able to utilize the full capacity of his speed, where instead of sacrificing portions of his speed to then run that route, which slows him down and allows the defender, to keep up. Gray is a guy who should see some reps this year. Not sure exactly what capacity. I still believe he's a guy who will make a bigger impact in 2024 once Juwan Jennings and Ray McLeod likely leave the team, or at least they're set to be free agents. I think he's made it primed to make a bigger impact in 2024. Another year getting stronger helps settle him into that slot role, but he should still see snaps this year, and he is a burner that is getting better and, kind of taking off that raw moniker off his name heading into year 2 of camp.
So I believe Steve's comment, so he has 2 comments. So deep shots cause more turnovers. I think in the last 2 years, we're top in that category. But then he followed it up with not turning the ball over. So I think he meant by deep shots cause less turnovers. I don't know what he meant by this comment, but I'm going to take it as
I think what he's meaning is we take the most deep shots without, or we're top 2 in deep shots without turning the ball over. Probably indicating how open receivers are, which is something for Kyle Shanahan.
And I think,
or that's what I think it is. I'm not sure.
I think taking deep shots is if you have a quarterback that rarely takes the deep shots, then I think it's a turnover. It could be a potential turnover because they don't rep it as often. They don't have the ability to do it. So the ball tends to float because they feel like they have to get a lot. So, for example, Jordan Love, preseason game a few days ago, he attempts a deep shot to Christian Watson, puts a lot of air under it, and he's just trying to get it out there, let him run under it. It gave a lot of time for the safety to get under it and break it up. That's what we've seen from Brock Purdy throughout training camp. We've seen that from Trey Lance once to Deebo Samuel, but instead he overthrew him. We've seen that from Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen. So we've seen that kind of throw, but when the quarterbacks aren't consistently repping it, that's when it becomes an area for concern. So I'm going to start getting into questions because I know there's a lot of great questions in the chat. I know Jesus, shout out to Jesus, wants to see Mason versus Davis run because Mitchell and CMC might get hurt. Hey, don't be putting that bad juju out there. Nah, all jokes aside, but very great point. I mean, how can they carry a backfield if, for example, Mitchell goes down and then CMC goes down? Can they carry a backfield? I think they could, actually. I really do. The 2 good running backs, I think you split the backfield. What were your thoughts on that, Rohan?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about these 2, I think going into camp, I wanted Mitchell on this roster. I want 3 capable running backs for this team, and I didn't think the 49ers had it going into camp without Mitchell. Tyrion Davis-Price was a big question mark. However, after camp, I'm confident in Tyrion Davis-Price. I think he can be a solid contributor for this team. Still confident as always in Jordan Mason, given what he produced last year, and also because he's a hard physical runner that should help this team. That's 3 capable running backs because Christian McCaffrey's obviously in the fold. I'm comfortable with both of those. I think Mitchell's expendable, but even if Mitchell remains, they've got a strong running back room that is amongst the best, if not the best, in the league.
That's a very good way to put it. I like that. I like that. Now, Harold said reports is that Latu is a huge butterfingers. Will he make the team? Um, I don't think from the beginning we drafted him. I didn't think he would make the team. I really didn't. I didn't think he was, and this is because I was prior to the draft. I was watching a lot of tight ends. I felt like tight end was a very big area of need. I think that's a position that they should prioritize. Um, but I didn't think Latu was that kind of guy. I thought he was a 7th-round pick.
Yeah, I didn't like the pick either. Overall, we were actually live together. Did not like the pick overall. I honestly thought Braden Willis was a better selection. So, not a big fan of Cameron
That's who
Latu,
I'm excited
but
about.
I hope he continues to grow. I'm not too concerned about preseason drops. I want to see training camp drops. Want to see if it remains to be an issue. But he did have a fairly high drop rate, I believe, in college. So that's something to point out.
Well, he's also a linebacker converted tight end, so it's like realistically, how good are his hands? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're a linebacker. Your hands probably aren't the greatest. A good run blocker. I mean, I'm not saying he can't get better, but it's hard to see receivers, tight ends, running backs when they have drop issues. They have hand issues. You hardly see them get much better. So I feel like, could he be a good tight end? Absolutely, he can. He has athleticism. But I think Braden Willis is ahead of him, and that's a guy that I'm excited to see. Because shout out to Zach. What's up, my man? Aside from QBs, which position are you guys excited to watch today? I'm excited to be honest. I'm the position I'm most excited to see today in terms of like who I'm expecting to stand out. I'm not expecting much from this game, but I know they're going to stand out. So it's going to be an easy way for me to answer this question is a linebacking room. I think Jalen Graham, D. Winters, Marcelino McCurry-Ball, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, I think they're going to stand out. I think that's who I'm most excited to watch today. The depth at linebacker is the deepest I've seen in quite. Very excited to see the linebacking room without Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. If you're in the chat, keep asking questions. Make sure you're subscribed to both channels. Hit that like button, that notification bell, and run it up.
And I mean, talking about linebackers, I honestly think, this is one of the deepest rooms we've had in a while. Because you've got maybe 8 or 9 guys, I think 8 guys that you can make an argument for 5 spots or 6 spots. I think the 49ers carry 6. In my post-training camp projection, I had 6 names on there. Obviously, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. Those 2 were there. I thought Oren Burks would make it and Marcelino McCurry-Ball would make it. Marcelino McCurry-Ball has stood out. I think he's the 3rd best linebacker on the team. I thought he's a lock. Oren Burks, very capable special teamer. The 49ers also trust him with a year in the system and also think the special teams capability I think is huge. That leaves 2 spots between Jalen Graham, Curtis Robinson, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, and D. Winters. Personally, I think the 49ers, I think they carry 6 instead of 5, and I think they go with both of their rookies. I like both of their rookies. I think they've both flashed in training camp, and I think that the 49ers are capable enough to where they can cut Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, bring him back on the practice squad, and potentially have him active for the first few games as a special teamer. But also, I think that Curtis Robinson, if he has a strong training camp, could be on his way out with the trade. I think the 49ers could look to move one of their guys if they get some value back. Even if it's a 7th-round pick, they're going to pull the trigger given the depth that they have at the position. But I think both rookies make it, which is something I was not that confident about heading into camp. I honestly thought there was a realistic chance that both rookies could get cut based on how they played in camp, but both impressed me, and now they're both on my 53-man roster.
And I think it's much easier to trade guys like Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles than trying to get Jalen Graham and D. Winters from waivers back to the practice squad. I think they're gonna. I think those two linebackers are gonna look good during the preseason. I think that if you let them go to waivers, they're gonna get cleaned. Um, Now, shout out to my man Throwback. Hey Marco, are you concerned with the offensive line depth? Absolutely, and that's what's concerning is if you and it's not even just the 49ers offensive line depth. Like let's go a little further. If you're watching preseason games right now and you're watching quarterbacks play, offensive line depth is an issue throughout the NFL. Um, right after your starting offensive linemen, backups and third strings are terrible across the NFL. So watching Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, I am going to give them the benefit of doubt because they're going with 2s and 3s at the offensive line. And the offensive line is terrible across the NFL. To me, that's the biggest issue is how do they look with the bad offensive line? Because most likely they're going to get sacked 1 or 2 times. That's my prediction. Because the offensive line isn't the greatest. Now, I'm excited to see Leroy Watson. That's for sure. I mean, Leroy Watson is probably one of my dark horse candidates to make the roster. Like, he is a guy who I truly believe could make the roster because he's a better tackle than the other guys we have on the roster. Very excited to see the depth at offensive line. Now, I'm curious to see who starts at center because if it's Luciano, I believe, was it Luciano?
Yeah, Corey Luciano.
If it's him, I'm concerned. Very concerned.
I would assume it's Keith Ishmael. That is my guess based on second team. He was the second team offense center consistently, but I hope the 49ers, what they do instead is try and throw one of the guys who could play center out there. My thought, though, now is that because there's no first team anymore, they're going to throw out a variation of John Feliciano, Nick Sakel, and Jason Poe. That is my guess. I think that those three, with Feliciano likely at center and the other two at the guard spots, I think that that's what they're going to start with.
But I think, like, even if you put Ishmael, because I know Luciano was who was repping with Trey Lance during his 2 fumbles at the Raiders joint practice. I want to see Feliciano get the reps. I really do. I think out of all the centers, I think he has the best chance to be the backup center / guard on the roster. So I'm excited to see the offensive line. Do you think they're going to struggle or do you think they're going to excel? What do you think about the O-line?
I think it's going to be a mix of both. And you pointed out how throughout the NFL, the backup offensive linemen aren't good. And the reason is a lot of other positions don't have scarcity. Running back doesn't have scarcity. You could find good running backs in the late rounds of the draft. You could find good running backs on drafted free agency. You could find good running backs in free agency for cheap. Receiver being a hot commodity, a position where a lot of talent is being pumped in year out. However, offensive line is not one of those positions already. If you look at the top right tackles in the league, if you go to the top 10, you'd probably be surprised to see Mike McGlinchey in the top 10, but he's a top 10 right tackle. That's why he got paid $17.5 million a year. The level of talent at positions on the offensive line isn't that high in comparison to the rest of the league. And so, to me, am I going to be worried? I mean, a little bit. I think that there are going to be struggles based on, what we've seen so far. Based on what we've seen, there will be struggles. But I also think it'll take some continuity. And the thing about the second team offensive line, the first team offensive line gets a lot of continuity. The second team offensive line, not so much. You'll see rotating pieces. You'll see them trying out different players at different tackle spots. Now you might see Pryor at left tackle, Leroy at right tackle, or you might see, Luciano in there at center, Ishmael in there at center, Feliciano in there at center. You might see Feliciano at guard. You're going to see a lot of different variations. And so that's also what makes it kind of tough overall for the offensive line because of the amount of reliability that you need on your fellow counterparts. So I do expect, some struggles on the offensive line, but that's just a part of the game that they're going to have to, deal with. And that's something that you hope the quarterbacks, can bounce back off of and continue to have a solid performance.
I agree. I agree with everything you just said right there. Now, my biggest concern is exactly what Throwback says, right? I feel like Trey Lance can't win for losing. If he balls on Sunday, people will say it's only preseason. If he has a bad game, they'll say he can't execute against backups. get ready for that. I agree. I really agree. It's not a win-win situation for Trey because either way, he's going to get criticized for going against backups in the preseason or having a bad game. It's whether he has a bad game or not. I don't think he will, but we'll see. Now, this to me was always something that I thought was interesting because Coach Forrester always was very high on Jason Poe. So was the fan base for the most part. I always thought he was a good, cool story. Like I love that he's from Mercer. I love that he's a really good player. But I felt like his size and his arm length was always a big concern. Like you could have the great athleticism, but you also need like let's be real. Like you could be super smart, super everything, but you still need the physical abilities to do something, right? Like and in the NFL, if you're going up against a guy like NFL drafts for physical abilities, right? Like that's what they could teach you everything else. They feel like so when you have shorter arms going up against dudes with 35-inch arms length, you're gonna struggle. And I feel like I don't know if that's what Coach Forrester said, but I'm very curious to read that article. And that you're gonna have to send that to me on Twitter or tag me in it somewhere. So if you follow me on Twitter, please do so.
I have it.
Oh, you have
I've
it?
read it pretty extensively. Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Oh, what did he say?
It's interesting. Jason Poe, this is something that they've probably known internally for a while, and I mean, something we've known. Poe, he pointed out him playing at guard. So Jason Poe's played at left guard or right guard for the majority of camp. Pointed out, though, unfortunately, that while Jason Poe is the second strongest guy on the team, potentially behind Trent Williams, that length is truly important. The length and size is truly important, and that's what he's lacking. So they're going to try him out at center. The one issue right now with him at center is Jason Poe is not a communicative guy. He's a guy who let his play do the talking, a more quiet guy, and they're trying to develop him to be more of a communicator because of how integral that part of the position is at center. And so they're going to try him out at center, at least sprinkle in reps there, because Forster essentially said that is the likely position that he can play in the NFL. He's developing there. He's not ready yet, but that's the position he'll likely have to play in the NFL, and pointed out how the length and size differences at center are different than at guard and at tackle. And so that's kind of the part about Poe's limitation that he pointed out. Also, that's kind of the main thing. And this is also, after this, that was a big portion as to why I left Jason Poe off my 53-man roster this year. I have the 49ers carrying 8 offensive linemen. It's their 5 starters. It's Leroy Watson at the swing tackle position over Jalen Moore and over Matt Pryor. And then it's John Feliciano and Nick Sakel. No Jason Poe there on the roster.
So this is a great question by James Journal. So sorry if I butchered your last name, man. But why is length more important than strength? So when you're trying to run the outside zone and you're trying to reach block 3 techniques or trying to get to the next guy on a reach block from the guard position, you have to be able to get your hands and your arms out there to get position and then flip your hips, right? Like that's like the biggest. They like to get hand control and then flip their hips to control the offensive lineman. So you have to have the length to be able to get there. Even in pass pro, you don't want a defensive lineman getting under your shoulders or under your chest, actually, I should say, under your chest, because the moment they get you under your chest and they get you back, you're kind of on your heels, and that's where you don't want to be. Another reason is they're able to do what they want rather than you be able to control the play. So arm length is also important over strength because it's not like the 49ers are going old school I formation, straight down the 2-hole, and we're going on a 32 smash. Like they're not running regular smashes like that. They're not running those drives like. So for me, or power I, like right, they're not going that kind of offense. Like it's not the old school offense anymore. So it's athleticism and length are what are going to get you to run Kyle's offense a little bit better. So I think that's the biggest issue on why length is more important than strength. But I also wouldn't say length is more important because you got to have strength still in order to take on a bull rush, flip your hips in the run game when you're reaching. So I wouldn't say it's more important, but it's very important. It's very crucial to be able to do everything in Kyle Shanahan's offense.
No, I agree. And that's what Forster essentially said in that press conference. This is a good topic.
So Rohan,
Before you give your take, let me just clarify this. So 49ers throwback says Rohan doesn't see anything wrong with Brock Purdy not playing in the preseason. I think it's a concern. He needs reps and is coming back off a UCL injury. Let me clarify. I didn't say preseason. I said today. I don't care that he's playing today. Give me your take on the situation.
Is he really coming back? Like, I'm not saying is he coming. Like, is he really? I worded that wrong. Actually, isn't he fully healthy? Didn't he get cleared to practice and be a full go? Like, I was told by the 49ers, by John Lynch, he is a full go, no limitations. All right, like that's what we heard.
I don't think though that they're not playing him because he's not a full go. Here's my take on it.
Hold on. Are you trying to say that his 8 games that he played last season were enough to warrant him not playing in the first preseason game?
No. His first preseason game was Friday. That's the way that I look at it. He had 39 reps compared to the 5 or 6 for the other guys. To me, I don't care that he doesn't play in the preseason. The reason is because in the preseason, the reps are fluctuating for the offense and defense. He's not going to go up against every first-team defense guy tomorrow. He's also not going to play with every first-team guy. They did the same thing, I believe, with Trey Lance last year in the first preseason game. I don't think that they played him extensively, if anything. I think they played him a quarter, but that's it. But still, overall, my point is I care a lot more about the joint practices than the preseason. Why? Because that's the setting where you're truly seeing first team offense versus first team defense, which is why I hold stock. I don't think that you can just say it's just practice. I hold stock in the joint practices more than I hold stock in Brock Purdy playing in the preseason. I think that's the opportunity where he truly was going to go up against the top defense. And that's where I personally cared to see him play. So I would evaluate. I do think it's important to evaluate how he played on Thursday and how he played on Friday. And so I think it's important to evaluate the issues that he had. As for the preseason, though, personally, I don't care. I don't think a quarter changes much in the preseason, especially when you're not playing against the starters. And I don't think the Raiders are going to have their starting defense out. You won't see their starting quarterback out there because you're playing in the joint practices. Other teams, they're going to bench their starters if they play in joint practices. You'll see them play, though, if they're not in joint practices.
So I get it in that aspect because if you're considering joint practice his preseason game, but if he doesn't play any of the, I also thought it was a bad idea for Kyle not to play Trey Lance. I feel like any and every rep they could get, even if it's against the twos, is a quality rep because there's coverages they haven't seen, right? Like there's disguised blitzes, there's disguised coverages that they need to be able to see. So for me, I don't mind a series. So for example, you get a series in, you go score a touchdown, call it a day. Get a series in, even if it's a 3-and-out, just get a series in. For me, I know the Chiefs don't do joint practices, but if we're having Patrick, like out of all people, if Patrick Mahomes is playing in the preseason, I don't think anyone else should be like, well, I don't have to. Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback in the league right now. Probably, arguably, might go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game. Steve-O, yes, they do. Go back and watch. People blitz.
People definitely blitz.
Go back and watch DeMeco Ryan.
Our own defensive coordinator.
Our own
defensive coordinator today, Steve Wilkes, is going to blitz. He's going to probably blitz a good amount too.
DeMeco Ryans was blitzing yesterday. Robert Saleh was like, people blitz. You're gonna see the Raiders send a blitz at Trey Lance at least once or twice, at least, maybe even more, because they're trying to see what teams need or teams are doing at the moment. They're currently trying to see what players fit their system, right? Like that's the end goal. Like who fits my system where we can win enough games with. You have to call your defense and your offense the way you normally would, in a sense of you're not trying to show. Even if you do show. Like, realistically, if Kyle runs his entire offense, it doesn't matter. Everyone's seen his offense for the last 5 years fully. it doesn't matter. So I'm very curious to see how things go. Also, wanted to follow up on James Durnall. So with using an outside zone scheme, would Poe fit better in another scheme, or is he just flat out limited? I think he's just flat out limited. Now, I think he'd be better if it was a power scheme. So, for example, if he was with like the Baltimore Ravens, I feel like he'd be a better fit. But I still think he's limited to a certain extent. So I don't. But I also don't like to cap a player, right? Like I'm like, oh, he's this and he can't become this. Like he could become it, but it's just going to take a lot of work because I believe he has 32-inch arms. That's his arm length. So to me, that's where it becomes dicey and talking. Can he do that? Can he do
I
this?
don't even think it's 32-inch arms.
I thought it was last time I had when I thought when he
Oh
signed
no,
up
it
as
is 32. It is
when we
32.
signed up as an
Yeah, you're right.
undrafted free agent because usually my arm length like I want to have 33 or longer.
33,
That's
right? Yeah.
that's my when I'm scouting and when I'm doing my stuff. I like 33-inch arms, because it allows them. That's the minimum for me. Because it allows you to do the extra things that a coach could ask from you. So that's what I'm interested in seeing. Um, James also says my eyes are going to be glued on the O line if we compromise right side, and it's another injury was waiting to happen. That's a great point. Right side could be a potential injury for quarterback. Plenty of QB ones have already played in preseason games already, but Brock in his 2022 season, 7 games are taking days off. So that's nice. Rohan does have a great point in the sense of he had 30 something reps against the Raiders. That's why Kyle took away. Didn't really give Trey Lance and Sam Darnold reps again the joint practices. They're gonna earn their reps in the preseason game. They're gonna see their reps there. So great point, but also too, if we hold and Kyle said it, you said it, a lot of people were saying I hold a lot of weight in joint practices as well. So what does
I
that
agree.
mean? So what does that mean for a 3 interception day? Two that were in 11 on 11s, no 4 interceptions, 2 and 11 on 11s, and 2 and 7 on 7s. If we're gonna hold a lot of weight into actual joint practices, then we gotta talk about it. Right?
No, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And this is kind of my big point. I think you have to hold weight into the joint practices. One, Kyle Shanahan said, we care about them more. And it's clear, it's indicative in the rep count that Brock Purdy got in 11s, 39 compared to, I believe, Trey Lance had 5 reps. And to me, to me, this is the thing that matters because you're going up against the first team defense 39 times. This is real life action. You're not going to see this in the preseason, which is why I hold stock in it. And this is, I wrote an article yesterday, one pointing out my personal thoughts on the preseason versus joint practices and me valuing the joint practices more for Brock Purdy, but 2, pointing out that it is a concern that of how he's performing. You can say it's just practice, and I understand. I'm going to put out the disclaimers. First of all, we don't know necessarily always what does the coach want you to do? What is the process behind it? What are they looking for in your process to where some bad plays might not sound as bad when hearing the process? But overall, interceptions are interceptions. There's no way to frame interceptions in another way. If you're trying to force a read, go through the process and force that read, you shouldn't if it's going to end in an interception. Regardless, you should eat the play. You should do something else. You should hit a check down. So interceptions are interceptions. I think that's important to note. And I think it was a concern, to see Brock Purdy play or to throw 3 interceptions or whatever it is. Now, am I going to just, throw that all away and just say, man, I'm not confident in Brock no more? No, I'm not going to say that. But I think it is important to monitor because he will play in next week's preseason game. At least I hope he plays next week's preseason game, given the known joint practices. I think he gets probably a series or whatever. And next week's, maybe not the 3rd week. We'll see what goes on with the 3rd week.
So with joint practices and the interception issue, I've been saying it was an issue for me dating back to last season, right? Dropped interceptions that could go the other way. And what interceptions essentially lead to is shorter fields for offenses because depending on where you're throwing the interception. So I'm not counting the 7-on-7 ones. I'm not. I threw that out there. I'm not counting 7-on-7 interceptions, but there was 2 interceptions in 11-on-11s and one that was dropped. So potentially could have been 3. I'm not counting 11-on-11, but when you're 11-on-11s, you have no pressure. You don't got to throw passes to linebackers' chest. Like one of them was at the chest of a linebacker. So that's interesting, but I'm not counting those against him. I have him as 2 interceptions for 11-on-11s. So for me, when I'm looking at Brock Purdy, the issue has always been interceptions getting back to, or turnover, I should say turnover worthy plays. I'm going to use that word instead of interceptions. Turnover worthy plays, getting back to college. Has this mindset of a gunslinger. Now, when I say gunslinger, the quarterback I immediately think of, and I'm sure a lot of people think of when they think of gunslinger, is Brett Favre. Like, super rocket arm, gives no care about what is happening. He's going to let that ball swing. Now, it also led to Brett Favre being very interception prone. Now, when you look at Brett Favre, great quarterback, Hall of Famer, whatever you want to say about him as a person, that's separate. Now, as a quarterback, he threw 336 interceptions, and a lot of years he had 24, 23, 15, 16, 17, 18. Like, if you go down, one year he had 29 interceptions. 29 at age of 36. So, but he had the ability to do like those crazy things, right?
Right.
But the mindset for Brock Purdy is the same. But the only difference is the arm talent. Brett Favre had a cannon of an arm. He was a special quarterback in terms of arm talent. So for me, that's what I'm concerned about, is having that mindset is great. But when you're having that mindset and you're trying to fit it into tight windows, when you can't, it becomes an issue. So that's what I'm concerned about. I think Brock Purdy could still lead this offense and this team to great destination, maybe a Super Bowl. That's the hope. But if we're turning the ball over at a high rate, expect the 49ers defense to take a drop in play. Don't put a defense on the field for an extra 2 series because you're turning the ball over, and next thing you know, you're giving the opposing team the ball out the 30-yard line where they got to march 30 yards down the field to score a touchdown. They're already in field goal range. You're giving them points.
Right.
That's the biggest issue, is giving the other team points makes your defense a worse defense on the field too much, makes them tired. Preseason game 1, though, I don't care because we're about to go. We're about to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. You guys are about to like and subscribe to both channels because y'all love us and we love you guys. Shout out to every single one of you guys.
Hey, shout out to the fans, man. Appreciate it.
If it ain't for you guys, ain't nothing happening. No sports is happening. No media is happening. So shout out to every single fan in the game. Much respect to everyone. Rohan, what are you expecting from Steve Wilks?
Some fun. That's what I'm expecting. Some fun. I want to see some blitzes. I want to see, him utilize players in different ways. You'll see. I want to see the intriguing portions. Obviously, he's not going to give away the entirety of his playbook. He's not going to, show all the blitzes in his arsenal. But
see, but the thing is, so I disagree. Show the damn playbook. Want to know why? It's the same damn thing you ran in Carolina. There's not much that's going to change.
That. I don't know about that though. I don't. I think it's going to be a mix of that and a mix of what D'Amico ran, given how much success they had.
Then I would then show something. Don't come and run vanilla defense. Show me your blitzes. I mean,
I think he will show some. I just don't think he'll throw everything out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's everyone already has your tape. Like Kyle Shanahan, everyone has your tape. Sorry to break it to you. They've had your tape for the last 7 years. You've been with the 49ers. I'm sorry to break it to you. Run your damn offense. Steve Wilks, you've been a DC in the league for years. People have what you like to do. They have your tendencies. Just do you, right? Like, just do you. Don't let Kyle tell you that not to blitz. Don't listen to him. I don't care if he's your head coach. Do you. blitz the ball, blitz the quarterback and get after the ball. That's what I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see Javon Kinlaw. That's who I'm excited to see, Ron. Javon Kinlaw.
That's going to be a fun name. That's definitely going to be one. He's probably going to get the start, right? He's going to get the start.
He should.
Yeah, because I doubt Armstead Hargrave, so he'll get the start.
Before we head out, appreciate everyone in this chat, but Rohan, I need 3 players. We're going to go back and forth, so it's going to be hard because you can't say the player I say. I can't say the player you say. I need at least 3 players that's the 49er faithful. Whoa. All right. I'll start first then. Ambry Thomas.
Oh, no. I'm not participating in this conversation.
All right. I got you then. We'll do players that the 49er fan base should watch out for. Guys that are going to stand out. Now, don't go in with any expectations. Don't go in thinking, oh, my God, this player is going to have 150 yards. This guy's going to have interception. Don't do that because you're going to put yourself, setting yourself up for disappointment, right? That's what you're going to do. Go in with the mindset of, I want to see which players stand out to me. That's what I recommend for everyone to do because it'll show you a little bit something different from the preseason games. But Rohan, I'll give you the stage first. Give me your first player that's going to stand out.
The guy I'm looking at it for, Jair Brown. Jair Brown was a guy
Wasn't expecting that one.
In training camp didn't flash much, just didn't get many, splash plays. It seemed like he got an interception or something on the final day when practice was closed. Want to see what he does. Jair Brown is my first guy because I think that a game setting where he's going to play a lot more reps, especially, given the first team defense likely doesn't play, getting a lot more reps, I think will help Jair Brown and his getting him up to speed with the game flow. And I think that that'll be a good sign. Might get burned. We'll see. But I want to see some Jair Brown today.
So, a player I'm very excited to watch, or I'm kind of curious to see how he does. So, I hype up this guy all the time, or the room all the time. If you guys watch us a lot, I love linebackers. Playing linebacker growing up, my favorite player growing up, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman. I'm a linebacker guy. I'm not going Marcelino McCurry Ball, though. I'm going with a rookie. I'm going Jalen Graham. Now, 6'2" guy, 225 maybe, chiseled up. I'm excited to see him get downhill, and hit people. He is an old school linebacker that has the athleticism. I'm excited for Jalen Graham.
I agree. I think that is a good name for sure. He's a guy who I think will get his chance to shine in the preseason. Number 2 for me, potential CB1 today, Samuel Womack. I want to see what he gets to do. I think he'll get a lot of action, especially with the way the 49ers cornerback group currently is. And I'm excited to see him in what could be a significant amount of action today.
I'm going to go my next guy, Leroy Watson. I'm going Leroy Watson, my man. I feel like he could be a guy who, whether you stash him on the practice squad, whether you keep him on the roster, I think he could be he's a guy who you could develop into a quality tackle in the NFL. I'm very excited to see him. I think he might get the start at left tackle today. I don't know who's ahead of him at left tackle, but he might be starting today. I'm very excited to see that. I think he needs all the reps he could possibly get. I'm excited to see Leroy Watson today.
My number 3 is Brandon Allen. I think Brandon Allen, he's a guy who.
All right, bro, you're out of here. I'm just messing with you.
I mean, he could get maybe a few reps. I want to see how he plays at the end of each half.
Are you being serious?
No, of course not.
My number 3. You kept going. I'm like, I'm really about to have to kick you out of here.
My number 3 is Cleveland Farrell. Cleveland Farrell returning to his old team. Disappointed me at the beginning of training camp. Thought he grew towards the last few practices. I'm excited to see what, I want to see him in a team setting. That's something that I said. I don't think he's the best one-on-one player, but I think in a team setting, first of all, I want to see him against the run because that's something that'll be a lot more on display today, especially with tackling coming live. I want to see him against the run. I want to see how how that translates because I honestly think he has a good shot to start week 1. And that's funny to say, but I think right now, I mean, he's looked better than Drake Jackson. So would not be surprised if he has the edge to start week 1. But I also want to see how does he work as a pass rusher in a team setting in this, in this and how can he build off the end of training camp? That's my thing. Want to see how does Cleveland Farrell go? That's my number 3.
Now, I hate talking about kickers, but Jake Moody is a guy that I'm interested to see, but I'm not going to choose him for my third guy. I'm going Tay Martin, man. Tay Martin with Trey Lance, they've had a chemistry in training camp. I'm excited to see Tay Martin make a case to make this roster. Now, if he doesn't make this roster, whether he's going to make the team, NFL team, he's a dude. I think he's a receiver in the NFL. Tay Martin will be on the NFL roster after the preseason, and he's going to have a solid game today. Now, if I could, I would have named a couple other guys, but I think Tay Martin is a guy that is going to stand out. I almost named Drake Jackson, but I feel like that was an easy way out, so I went Tay Martin.
I like it. He's a guy who I like a lot.
I like it a lot. So make sure you guys subscribe to both channels. Hit that like button, notification bell. Share this with your cousins, your friends, your family members. Support us. We appreciate every single one of you guys for supporting us. Rohan, any last comments about the 49ers versus Raiders today?
Nah, man. I think overall, 49ers is going to be a fun first preseason game. I'm just excited to see football back. I haven't really watched too many of the preseason games so far. I haven't watched really any action. Just been away, the last few days. But now that I'm back, I'm excited to watch my first preseason game, see some real football back on the TV.
Absolutely. That's what I'm most excited about. Do one thing for me before you guys watch the Niner game. Right after this show, send a text message, all caps, to a Raiders fan. I know you know a Raiders fan. It's gonna be Niners, all caps, exclamation marks. Let them know. I don't care if it's preseason. Let them know. Appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in. The great question. Chat was very live and active today. I appreciate every single one of you guys for tuning in. Rohan, appreciate you, my man, for hopping on as always. Great conversation. Appreciate every single one of you guys. Peace out.